Welcome to the Sweater Knitting Show.
We are your co-hosts. I'm Johnny Vasquez.
And I'm Lacey Linne.
And this is the Sweater Knitting Show, the show where we talk about nothing but knitting sweaters. Now today on the show, we got some really cool special stuff for you all. We'll be talking about our sweater designs that we'll be doing for the 30-Day Sweater Challenge.
And because it's the first day of October, that means you should all be starting your sweaters for the challenge as well.
Yes, we'll also be walking through how to measure yourself properly, particularly if you're going to be designing your own sweater.
But these measurements will work even if you're not.
And we're going to be highlighting your guys' work as well. And Lacey's going to show you how to put together a sweater planning notebook.
I am one of those organizationally inclined people, and so I really like to have my stuff in order. So I want to show you how I'm doing that for my sweater.
Great. So let's get into our first topic for today, where Lacey's going to tell you a little bit more about putting together a sweater planning notebook.
So when it comes to planning a sweater, like there are different things that go into it. And if you've downloaded the sweater planning guide, we have a few like downloads and stuff, and I always like to keep my things together just in case I want to make another sweater like it, or I need to look back and see what I did for certain things. So I actually have a sweater planning notebook right now that is just like a composition book that I've been stapling things in, and it's kind of organized and a little bit messier than maybe I would have liked it to be. So I'm actually putting together a binder this time around. This is it. Ta-da! I even have a pretty little front on it. And in my binder, I'm going to be putting things like the measurement guide here. I just like hole punch them and I'll be sticking them in. And then I have some little, what are those? Page protectors that I'll be putting my swatch in, and then I'll have little pages where I can write down my gauge, and I'll keep all my math worksheets and stuff together. So as a designer, I have all of this information when I want to go back and write my actual pattern. But if you're not a designer and you just want to have this stuff together, this kind of thing is a really great idea to keep your stuff organized. So what I actually do for my family is I print off extra measurement worksheets, and I have each of them fill it out, or whenever I'm visiting, I'm like, okay, yay, it's measuring time, and I get measurements from everyone, and so that if I ever want to make them a present or whatever, I have their measurements on hand in my handy-dandy little sweater planning notebook, and I can just use those in my patterns. So that's kind of how I'm starting, and as we go along, I'll show you how it is coming along, but I just wanted to give you that idea so you can have it in mind as we're just starting our sweater, and as we go along you can add to it, because right now obviously there's not a whole lot yet, but as we go into designing and knitting our sweaters, it's a good thing to have on hand. Sorry, I gotta put this in there now that I've shown you because I don't want to lose it. So let's talk real quickly. Johnny and I are doing the challenge, obviously, and actually so are pretty much everyone that works here. Yay! So I want to tell you a little bit about what I'm doing, and then Johnny, how about you start and tell them about what you're doing?
Sure. So we're using the 30-Day Sweater framework that we've created, which you can also use through our 30-Day Sweater e-workbook or the 30-Day Sweater online course. And these both walk you through the process of designing your own custom fit, top-down, seamless raglan sweater. Okay? And the reason why we chose a raglan construction is because it's mostly knit in the round. You can try it on as you go to make sure that it's fitting properly, and you can make adjustments as you're going. And it's seamless, so you don't have to do a whole lot of finishing if you don't want to. So this is really attractive for people who are a little bit newer to knitting sweaters or aren't quite as advanced as far as their finishing work skills. You know, they don't really do a lot of seaming and things like that. That's why we designed the framework the way that we did. Now, you don't have to use our materials to participate in the challenge, you can find a sweater pattern that you want and knit along with us. Obviously, we can't offer support on those patterns because we didn't design them. So we are designing our own patterns using the sweater knitting framework, the 30-day sweater framework, and to give you guys an idea of what's possible in making your sweater. So before maybe we get into what we're designing, maybe let's talk a little bit about ways to get inspiration and maybe find ideas if people are wanting to design something on their own, or they're kind of wanting to find something that they want to make.
Well, my inspiration almost always comes from Pinterest, which I will say that I am a shameless Pinterester. I love things. I love pictures. So whenever I'm trying to figure out, okay, what kind of sweater do I actually want to make? Because I pretty much want to make every kind of sweater, but I usually have to narrow that down to one at a time. So figure out what I want to make next. I usually go to Pinterest and I look up sweaters and I look up a lot of my favorite different designers, and I know Erica Knight is like really active on Pinterest, so she has really great boards to go look at. I always look at her stuff, and just looking at sweaters in general. It doesn't have to be patterns or anything like that. I just see what kinds of things that I like, and then from there I'm like, oh wow, I've clicked like on 14 different sweater dresses. Maybe I'm into knitting sweater dresses right now. So then from there I look at more specific details, like, okay, do I want cables? How long do I want it? Do I want pockets? Do I want a cowl collar? And that's kind of how I get inspired to choose my own kind of sweater.
Now, the way I generally get inspired is I love going to the mall and walking around and looking at all of the different knitted sweaters that you can find in Macy's or JCPenney or Forever 21. Even if they're women's sweaters, even as a guy, I like seeing what they're doing with the construction and the stitch patterns and stuff. That way I can kind of pull from different places, combine things together, and then get the desired look that I want. So I take my smartphone with me everywhere, and I'll just snap a photo.
I'm sure they love that.
Then I'll save that up to Evernote or save it onto my computer for later, so that I can, when I'm ready to create something new, I've got a whole bunch of ideas that I can pull from. I like using Pinterest as well. I think it's a great way for seeing creative things that people have done. It's a lot harder for men because there's just not as many
really great men's knits.
Yeah, just there's not a lot of great pictures of men in sweaters. Like there are some, but women are a lot bigger on their fashion than men are.
And women are a lot bigger on Pinterest, realistically.
And the other thing that I look at is I'll go on Ravelry and see what's popular. Like, what are people liking to knit? Not that we want to always be like doing what the popular thing is, but ultimately, like, we want people to knit
things that are fashionable and
upcoming,
yeah.
And so it's not a bad idea to at least go and see, okay, this style is being, made a lot more than this style is being made more, or, shawl collars seem to be really popular right now more than cardigans, or, so I'm not saying that that's the case right now, but that's generally what we look for when we're coming up with sweater design. So for this 30-day sweater that I'm constructing here this month, I found a really cool picture on Pinterest of this sweater that had kind of like a ribbed cable pattern, and it's offset so that the cables look kind of wavy, and it's a really interesting look. Like, I wish I had a picture to show you on there, but I made a swatch to practice the technique.
It's really hard to see.
It's black dark. Because I like black. Most people hate knitting with black yarn, and I understand why that may be the case, but I definitely am not going to wear pink, so that's why I'm knitting with a darker color. It's what I tend to look better in. So there's a couple features that I really like about this cable work, and if you can't see it very well, I'm going to take some pictures and post that up on the forum and maybe in our Ravelry group. You can see it when I pull out the fabric that we've got, sort of our cable ribs. There's just one row of purl stitches in between each of the cables. It's a 4-stitch cable done on a bulky weight yarn, and then the cable repeat is every 8 rows. And what I've done is I've offset those 8 rows on each column. So your cable repeat will be happening here and here. On the next row, it happens here and here. And so what ends up happening is you get these kind of curvatures that sort of go in with each other, like this. Look really nice. And where the cable twist happens, you end up seeing kind of like a diagonal happen across the fabric. So there's a lot of cool things that are happening in the pattern on the fabric. I think it's going to be really, really cool when the sweater's done. I haven't decided quite yet if I'm going to go with a cardigan versus a pullover design, but obviously I'll need to make that decision pretty soon.
And what yarn are you using for that?
This is a yarn by Barocco called Peruvian Quick. Can you grab the ball?
Well, you just have the same.
So it's called Peruvian Quick. It's 100% wool, Peruvian wool, and it's a bulky weight yarn. There's a couple reasons why I went with a bulky weight yarn. This has a recommended gauge of 12 stitches over 4 inches using a size 11 needle. Now I'm using a size 13 needle to give it a little bit more drape. Since I live in a warmer climate, I want something that's going to be more of like an over jacket, like an overcoat, something that's going to be the top layer when it's a little bit cooler. And so, but I don't want it to be super dense and thick. So I'm using a size 13 needle to give it a little bit looser gauge. So the fabric's going to be a little bit thinner. It's going to be have a little bit more air pass through into it. So it'll still keep me warm, but it's not going to be like dripping sweat every single time that I put it on. And also, the other reason why I'm doing this with a big yarn on big needles is because we're super busy here at Yarn Nation, and we've got lots of things that we're working on, and I don't have time to devote to making a sweater on like DK weight yarn using size 6 needles. Like, I'm a big guy, you know. I'm got a 52-inch chest. That's a lot of knitting to get a sweater done with that small of a yarn. So that's another reason why I'm doing the bulky weight.
It's really funny that you would mention not knitting a sweater out of DK weight yarn and size 6 needles, because that is precisely what I'm doing. In fact, I'm using a DK weight cashmere from Pepperberry Knits. This is the beautiful tag. It's got a butterfly. Can't get it in the camera. Oh, there we go. Ta-da! And my swatch is also gray, but it's just stockinette, so it's really not that interesting. Yay! But it's got a nice little depth of color because the yarn itself is kind of like a barber pole technique with like a dark, like almost black, and then like a lighter gray. So it gives it a little bit of color definition. And I'm going to be making a sweater dress, as I mentioned. That's a big thing for me right now, especially for fall. It's going to be cap sleeves, and then it'll be a little bit longer in the body, so you can just wear it over like leggings or whatever, and then it'll have a big cowl collar. And I think I'm playing around with the idea of doing some waist shaping with ribbing, so we'll see how that turns out, but I'm really excited.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Just because I want a really flattering, like, go with anything kind of sweater dress. So that's why I've chosen to use gray. And gray is also one of my favorite colors to wear. So there you go.
We should also mention that Heidi at Pepperberry Knits was kind enough to send Lacey the yarn so that she could knit it for the 30-day sweater. So we will definitely be talking about Pepperberry Knits, throughout the
I'm pretty much in love.
Challenge.
It's so soft. Like, you can't like feel my swatch through the screen. I wish you could because it's amazing. I just want to I want to touch it. No, maybe you can't touch it.
Why not?
Fine. Ta-da! Amazing.
It is nice.
Feels great. And I am also using a size 6 needle, which I'm actually kind of a little bit surprised because it seems like no matter what needle size or what size of yarn I'm using, I almost always get 5 stitches per inch. How? I don't know. But I like the fabric, and I like how it's working out, and I'm okay with that. 5 stitches per inch is good.
I haven't measured my gauge yet, but I'm pretty sure that I'm at about like
3.
3 stitches per inch.
That'll be very quick.
Which I'm so excited because it's knitting up so fast, especially with as many cables that I'll be doing in the fabric. It's going to be a lot of
ridiculous.
work. But I'm excited. I think it's going to look awesome. I can't wait.
I would never, ever make a camelid sweater because I hate making cables. So, stockinette it is. Makes me happy.
Now, if you guys have questions about the challenge or what kind of sweater you can make, if you're eligible or not for the design competition, go ahead and keep putting those questions in the chat room. Or you can email us at questions@30daysweater.com. You can also join our Ravelry group, and you can post any questions that you have in there. Now, if you're participating using the 30-Day Sweater course, there's a forum on the 30-Day Sweater site where we'll be answering questions specific to the 30-Day Sweater course and the 30-Day Sweater framework. So if you have questions about those things, go ahead and post those in the forum there. That's where we'll answer those questions.
You want to move on to the measuring section?
Yeah, so one of the things we wanted to talk about today is how to measure properly, and we have a special guest to help us with that. So we're going to bring in Robert, who is my brother, and also is knitting his very first sweater. And we'll talk to him a little bit about what he wants to do with his sweater, and then we'll go into how to measure yourself properly.
And we also have the sweater measurement guide, body measurement guide from the sweater planning guide. So there's a worksheet here, and it's got like a little place for a name and the date, so you know when you measured that person or yourself. And so we're going to use that to go through the measurements for Bobby.
And there's a whole diagram that shows you where to measure and then where to mark it down as well. Now this is in the planning guide. It doesn't look like this one in the planning guide.
There's some in the planning guide and some in the course.
This particular worksheet is from the course and from the book.
Yes. So there you go.
So, but there is a worksheet in the sweater planning guide. It doesn't look exactly like this, but it has all the same information.
Yeah. So let me move my stool here, and then Bobby will come in, and I will step out. So since we don't all fit.
You're gonna sit first.
Oh, you're gonna sit first.
Oh,
just
I gotta
kidding.
sit.
Ta-da! Here he is.
All right, so everybody say hi to Robert. Robert, first, why don't you tell people what you do here at Yarn Nation?
I make him look good. That's usually what I tell everyone. But yeah, I do a lot of the editing and mostly the creative editing. So all the other short videos and class intros and stuff. A lot of stuff we'll see throughout the course here. Yeah, and then social media is pretty much the thing I've taken over for the 30-Day Sweater.
So if you guys are interacting on Twitter or Facebook or Pinterest or Instagram, you're probably talking to Robert. So Robert, why don't you tell us a little bit about the sweater that you plan on making and also the yarn that you're using before we get into actually measuring?
Well, this is the yarn that I'm going to be using, which is the buffalo wool from the Buffalo Wool Company. And
it's called Earth.
The hat I also have is from Buffalo Wool Company. Anyways, this is really good stuff. I've been working on my swatch, and it's really, it's a lot softer than I had anticipated. But
it is much softer. You'd think of a buffalo being like a big, hairy piece of steel wool.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. And you would think like it would be like really rough, but it's actually really soft stuff. But I'm thinking I'm going to do much more of a just the classic man sweater, crew neck that I can wear with over anything, button-ups or t-shirts, and that will kind of last and go with any outfit that I put on. So
great. Now, you've never made a sweater before.
No.
Are you scared?
A little. I think I do a bit of art on the side, like for my own creativity, and as like one of our big veins as an artist is finishing projects. So, but I think like working with a group of people, working like along with everybody else and like showing my progress and stuff is really gonna like push to like finish it. So I think I'm actually really excited. I think I will do it and I will finish it. So
Great, cool. And you're using the 30-day sweater course to help you along throughout the process.
yep.
So the first part of the course is measuring yourself so that we can make the sweater that we're designing a custom fit.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to walk through how to do that properly so that we get all of the right measurements when we are preparing for our pattern. So there's two kinds of measurements that we have to do. We have to do the 30 or the measurements for the body, and you also have to measure your gauge swatch before you can begin. And we'll talk a little bit more about gauge tomorrow, but today we're going to focus on measuring the body. So let's go ahead and get up. We're going to come back here.
So, and hi to all those that are saying hi there.
So the first thing that we need to measure based off of our guide here, let's adjust our camera so that we're in the frame. There we go. Is our bust or chest measurement. Now, us as men, we don't have a bust, but we do have a chest.
Pectoral area.
Right? So we're going to take our measuring tape here. You're going to want to use a Taylor's type measuring tape, and you're probably going to want to have someone help you measure. Now, the other thing that you'll want to keep in mind is have on clothing that is not necessarily form-fitting, but similar to what you would wear under the garment that you're planning on making. So a t-shirt like this is going to be perfectly fine for doing your measurements because it's going to give you a similar, extra amount on your body for when you're measuring. Okay, so let's go ahead and take Bobby's chest measurement. Sorry, I called you Bobby. We call him Bobby here. He prefers to go by Robert.
We could do Bobbert, like just hybrid.
Just Bobbert. Okay, so what we have here,
Make sure you breathe in.
you breathe in. Okay,
Now let you breathe.
now let it out. Okay, we don't want it to be pulled really tight. Okay, we want to have it so that we are snug, but we're not trying to fudge the numbers at all here. Okay, we want to get a very average. I'm not sure how to say it.
Snug but not too tight.
Snug but not too tight. Ultimately, is what we're going for. So here, what I have is 37 and about, I would say about a half. Okay. If we let this come out a little bit, we're definitely at 37 and a half.
Okay.
For the sake of time, we're not going to measure multiple times, but I do recommend that you measure each spot 3 times because that will give you, and then average the 3 measurements together. That will give you the best result for your measurements. And if you're getting drastically different measurements each time you measure, then you're definitely doing something wrong. So drastically means like you're an inch off each time. If you're off by like a fraction of an inch, that's not a big deal. All right, so they say Bobbert is a good name.
Yeah.
Cool, that's what I call him anyway.
So next is going to be the neck. And for me, I think this is actually the hardest place to measure because when you measure a neck, particularly for a man, you're measuring around the neck for something like a collar, okay? Somewhere you would put a tie around or something like that. And that's not really what we're looking for here when we're planning out a sweater. We want to measure the neckline that we want to end up having in the sweater, okay? So you're going to want to be measuring more around the collar of, say, a shirt, or if you're a woman and you want to have something more like a scoop neck that's going to come out further away from, your natural neck. That's where you're going to want to measure around, okay? So how are you thinking you want your neck to fit? About where do you want the collar to come into?
I want pretty much exactly where this collar is.
Okay.
That makes things easy.
So what we're going to do here is just measure the collar on his shirt instead.
He makes it look really painful. It's really not.
So I'm just laying the tape here kind of around the edge of the collar. And this one is not a measurement that has to be super, super exact. Okay, we just want it to be...
I like how I got a whole team here.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
So here I'm getting about 18 inches around the collar. Now if that was neck size, like my neck, around the actual neck is about 18 inches exactly, which is a big neck for a man. Bobby, your neck's probably, what, 15 and a half?
Yep.
Something like that normally. So, but I also outweigh Bobby by almost 100 pounds. So. Yeah. All right, so we've got our neck measurement. Now, again, if we were doing something that was more like a boat neck, you're going to want to come out a lot further and measure, you know, where you want your neckline to be, okay?
Next is raglan.
Next is going to be, for us, we're measuring a raglan length because we're making a raglan sweater. So what that means is we're going to measure from the place where we had our neck measurement. Now, again, if you're wanting a collar that's a little bit wider, it might be good to use some chalk or some Taylor's, is it Taylor's chalk? Taylor's soap or soap to mark on your garment where that neckline is going to be. That will help you measure out the neckline and where you want to start your raglan. So if you're going to start your raglan from here, we want the raglan to begin at the neckline and come down to underneath the armpit about 2 inches or so from the base of
But you want it.
your armpit. Now for Robert here, we're going to come all the way up to the collar and come down around. And we've got about, I would say, 11 3/4 inches.
11 3/4. All right.
Leah MV says, how would you measure for a V-neck?
Same thing.
So the V-neck will not change as far as the collar measurement. The V-neck is done with shaping later.
So you would measure it just as like around your neck.
Yeah, you just measure it as you normally would. All right, next we're going to do body length. Now the body length is actually going to come from where we measured the bottom of the raglan, okay, and down to where we want the bottom of the sweater to be. Now for Robert, I'm going to assume the shirt length that you've got right now is probably where you want your sweater to end up.
Right. I usually say right up at the top of the pocket.
Top of the pocket?
Yeah.
Okay. So that will be a little bit different for everybody. If you're going to make a tunic length, then obviously you're going to measure a little bit further. If you're going to make a sweater dress like Lacey is, then you're going to measure even further down as well. So go ahead and just turn this way a little bit so it's easier for people to see. So again, we're coming about 2 inches down. I'm just marking with my fingers about 3 finger lengths below the armpit. And then we're going to measure from there.
And let me take this down a little bit.
So we can see where
We can see where we end. Now I have big fingers as well, so you may, and this doesn't have to be exact. You're basically going to want to start from where you have a comfortable end to your armhole on, say, a shirt that you like. Okay. Am I tickling you?
I'm kind of grabbing your head.
in the picture.
In the video. Okay, so we're measuring down here, and we've got about 16.5 inches to the base of the shirt. If we wanted to go to the pockets, then it would be 17.
Then we're gonna, we're not doing any shaping, so we don't need to do waist shaping stuff. So
Now, for most people, or women, that have a little bit more shapely figure, that aren't more like a barrel like I am, you'll have some waist shaping. And so the waist, you would measure at the natural waist, which is going to be about where your belly button is. Just maybe right above that. So Bobby's belly button's right here. And so we're not gonna take this measurement for him, but I'm gonna show you how to measure, just like we did for the chest. Go ahead and breathe out. Okay, after you breathe out, then just let it relax. And we've got a measurement of 33 for Bobby's waist. Go ahead and keep
known facts, not implying anything, but all these measurements are the same as Superman's. Just thought I'd throw that out there.
And if you guys have questions, go ahead and keep putting them in the chat room. We will address the questions after we go through all of this section here. So, all right, what do we have next?
Sleeve length.
The sleeve length is next.
Underarm trim.
Let's make sure we go through all of the measurements in the worksheet.
Waist shaping 1 would be from your bust to your natural waist.
Okay, so in the worksheet, we talk about some other areas for doing measurements to help with your waist shaping. This is particularly useful if you're designing a sweater. You want to have a lot of different measurements so that you can adjust the pattern as you're working based on the measurements that you have. So the next measurement would come from the bust, basically where we measured for the bust, right across the center of the chest, okay, and then down to the natural waist, all right? So we're going to come about right here to the natural waist. For Robert, that's 9 inches.
And then from the natural waist down to the length.
Okay, and then we'll continue going down here from the natural waist all the way down to where we want the base of our sweater to be. So this was 17 inches for us. So this is going to be, what is that, 8 inches to finish off the other. So basically what's happening is we're segmenting the length of the sweater that we chose already, and then we're cutting that at the natural waist, and we're just dividing that in 2. So it's not exactly divided by 2. It's not even on both sides.
Where your waist is situated on that.
Right. So we'll have 2 measurements, though, that have been bisected by that waist measurement. Okay. So next we have the sleeve length. The sleeve length, we are measuring. Which sleeve length are we measuring here?
Underarm to the length of the sleeve.
So we're going to measure from the underarm here to the length of the sleeve, which is going to be where you want the sleeve to end at your hand. So guys tend to like the sleeve to come a little bit resting on the top of the palm.
If you want short sleeve, 3/4 length sleeve.
If you want different lengths of sleeves, this is where you would measure out those lengths. So if you wanted a short sleeve, you know, like a 1/4 length. If you wanted a 3/4 length sleeve, a full length sleeve. If you wanted it to be a little bit longer to cover your whole thumb, and you can put a thumb hole in the sweater, you could do that as well. So the reason why we're going to measure this from under the bottom of the arm is because we can't get an accurate measurement at the top of the shoulder. There's no definitive line here. But we can measure from the bottom of the arm. So we're going to come straight from the bottom here all the way across. And Robert, I'm guessing you want to be right about here. Okay? So that is, we're going to say 22 1/4.
And wrist.
All right, now we're going to measure around the wrist. This is another one where we're going to measure a little bit loosely. This is a place where you might want to add in some ease. Okay, so you can say if you want to have some extra width around your wrist, we can take the measurement of the wrist and then add, say, 2 to 4 inches.
1 or 2 inches.
Okay, 1 to 2 inches to give it a little bit more room. Traditionally, cuffs of sleeves are done with ribbing, so they're going to pull in a little bit tighter anyway. But let's go ahead and measure the wrist. So we're just going to come loosely around the wrist, and it looks like we've got, let's say, 7 1/4 around the wrist. Now that's fitting nice and tight around the wrist. So again, you may want to add a couple inches of room if you don't want it to be right up against your skin. I like my sweater sleeves to be have a little bit more room in them, so I probably would add more like 2 inches for myself. All right, now we are doing
sleeve shaping. So
the sleeve shaping. So this is what we're doing again here is we're bisecting the sleeve in 2 places. Now this is going to be most useful if you're doing a full length sweater sleeve. Okay, so we're going to again come from below the arm, and we're going to come to the elbow. So go ahead and bend your elbow. And we've got about 11.5 inches here. And then what you can do to make this easier is just take your full sweater sleeve length, subtract this top part of the sleeve, and then what you have left is the second half of the sleeve, rather than trying to measure and make a measurement that may not be exactly the same.
And then you'll measure the last measurement will be the elbow.
Okay, so now the last thing we'll do is the elbow. So we're going to have the elbow slightly bent at a 45-degree angle, okay, and we're going to come all the way around the elbow. Here we get, let's say, 12 3/4 of an inch. So this is going to help in decreasing from the top of the sweater sleeve down to the elbow, because you're going to decrease at a different rate here than you will decrease from the elbow down to the cuff.
That's it.
Now, if any of you want to take down those measurements and knit me another sweater, I will be more than willing to let you do that.
All right, so that is all of the measurements that we'll be taking for the 30-day sweater framework to help us design a sweater that is custom fit to us. Now, the other advantage of the 30-day sweater framework is that we have some sweater patterns that have been pre-designed, and you can then take these measurements and apply them to the sweater design, and then we can then knit that sweater design to fit you exactly. All right, so Bobby or Robert, thank you so much for hanging out with us. I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot more of your progress throughout the challenge. Oh, and everybody make sure to say hi to Robert on Twitter at 30Day Sweater. So that's at 30Day Sweater, or on Instagram also at 30Day Sweater.
I'll be sure to find you. So. Nice seeing you.
Switch. Okay, so we just have a couple more things, and then we'll be done for the day.
Yeah, so first, before we go into our question and answer section, we're going to highlight some people's photos from yesterday. Yesterday, we talked a lot about yarn selection and choosing your yarn. And we had a lot of people post up their photos on Twitter and Facebook and Ravelry and Instagram. So let's highlight some of those that we found since yesterday. First, we actually have Robert's yarn. This is the Buffalo Wool Company yarn that we should also say Buffalo Wool Company. Ron and Teresa Miskin have been kind enough to donate the yarn to Robert for him to knit his sweater. They don't knit themselves very much, so they wanted someone to be able to make something out of their sweater. So thank you very much to Buffalo Wool Company for sponsoring the challenge. Next, we have NV Knits, at NV Knits. This was posted on Twitter, and it looks like she's started her gauge swatch using Knit Picks yarn. Knit Picks is a really popular choice, seems, for a lot of people's sweaters, and obviously so. They've got a big selection, and they're very affordable. Mm-hmm. Next, we have Kathy Moore, who is knitting with some really interesting yarn. I've never seen this before. It looks like it's called Amelie or Amelie. And the labels are beautiful. I really like the color choices. And this is a picture that she emailed into us to questions@30daysweater.com. And I'm really excited to see how this turns out.
We saw her yarn yesterday, right?
Yeah, this is Kara, who is Badgley CN on Instagram. And this is her swatch that she's made up with her yarn that she posted before. I think we highlighted it yesterday. And finally, I'm really excited about this one. This is a yarn from Interlacement's. This was posted by @LeahMV on Ravelry. And it's just beautiful.
Apparently she got it at Stitches quite a while ago and is now just getting to use it. So I'm really excited to see what she comes up with.
Yeah, this is a beautiful yarn. It's called Seed. I think actually Leah's in the chat room with us today. So can't wait to see what her her sweater ends up looking like. She posted this on our Ravelry group, which you can join at 30daysweater.com/Ravelry. That will take you straight to our Ravelry group. And there's a thread in there that's been started on sharing your yarn and making your introductions. We're going to post 2 more threads today, one on what sweater you're planning on making, or if you're designing your own. And we'll also start a daily thread. Every day we'll have a new thread for you to share pictures of your progress. So you can just post up for that day what you've been making. So really excited about those as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into questions here. We've had a lot of them throughout today's show, so I'm going to move back up to the top of the chat room and we'll come and answer those through. If you have more questions, go ahead and post those in the chat room as well, and we'll be answering them as we get to them. Now, one of the first questions that someone had is, let's see. Okay, one of the first question is, do you have to knit a top-down raglan sweater for the challenge? Okay, and there's a little bit of confusion about what is the challenge and what is part of our course. So the book, the 30-Day Sweater, and the course, the 30-Day Sweater, are both designed around the idea of designing a top-down raglan sweater. But that's only one way to participate in the 30-Day Sweater Challenge, okay? You can knit whatever sweater you want during the challenge. So if you want to knit a bottom-up set-in sleeve sweater with a cowl collar, that's awesome. We just don't have any resources that show you how to do that. You'll have to find a pattern that does that for you. So,
and I believe that what they were talking about in the actual chat room is in our sweater planning guide. One of the first steps is choosing your sweater construction, and it gives all the different kinds of construction. So if you have set-in sleeves or raglan, or you're doing a traditional circle yoke, those are all options in the sweater planning guide. The sweater planning guide is not actually part of the course, so if you want instructions on how to make a sweater, that's just the raglan style, the top-down raglan style. But any of the types of sweater constructions are definitely an option for the challenge. We just can't give you instructions on those.
Yeah, the sweater planning guide is designed to help you think through what it is you want to make. It doesn't talk about how to make those things. It's all about, okay, let's make the decisions about what yarn I want to use, what kind of construction I want, and then that will make your search a lot more easy when you go to find a pattern that fits within that.
Let's see.
So those people who are saying you can't knit anything but a raglan, that is not the case for the challenge, but that is the case if you're using the course or the book.
Let's see.
If you don't design your... Juliet in Boots says, if we don't design our own sweater, are you eligible for any prizes, and where will we be posting pictures? So we will, starting tomorrow, we're going to be doing some big giveaways from some of our yarn sponsors and other corporate sponsors that have donated prizes to the challenge. Okay, and you don't have to do anything to win those things other than
show up here.
Just sign up and say, hey, I want to win. Okay, to participate in the design competition. This is specifically for the 30-Day Sweater framework, using our top-down sweater process, okay, the top-down raglan sweater process. And so, yes, you do have to design your own sweater to be a part of the design competition, okay? The 30-Day Sweater Challenge is not the same thing as the design competition, okay? You can design your own sweater as part of the challenge and then submit your design at the end of the challenge for the competition. So the competition will happen after the challenge, and that begins on November 1st. You'll be able to start submitting photos, and when we get to that point, we'll tell you how to actually do that. But we're not going to get bogged down in those details right now.
You actually can win yarn just by showing up. So you don't have to enter the challenge to win yarn, period. You just have to, if for those specific prizes are for the actual design competition. So, yay, everyone gets a chance to win yarn.
Right. And we do have some really great prizes.
And really, really good prizes. Not joking. Those are awesome prizes.
we have more yarn than we know what to do with to give away.
Yeah.
Now, other question that we've been getting through email a lot is, can I design a crocheted sweater for the design competition? And the answer is not right now, not for this event this year. Our hope is to have a version of the 30-day sweater framework for crochet patterns available next year, but that won't be the case this year. So no, crochet sweaters are not eligible for the design competition, but you can make a crocheted sweater during the challenge. Roxy says, what do you think of holding 2 yarns together? That as long as you're getting the gauge for your pattern, that's absolutely fine. If you're designing a sweater using our framework, you can hold 2 yarns together. You're just going to want to document your gauge.
And another cool thing about holding 2 yarns together is, especially if you're using hand-painted yarns, it actually helps to even out the colors in your sweater. So if you have 2 different balls that are not exactly the same color, if you hold them together and you're actually making a thicker yarn, then it helps even out the color. So you don't have like a distinct line like, oh, look, I changed balls here and it was slightly different. So that's actually a really great way to even out your color if you're using hand-painted yarns. And it makes it faster to knit. Yay.
Someone wants to know, Suzette says, is Robert my brother? Yes, he is my brother.
Jess JK says, if I'm doing a cowl collar, how much extra yarn should I allow? That depends how big your sweater is and how big you want the cowl collar to be. I absolutely love big cowl collars, like a big, warm, fuzzy, amazing thing. So I allow, with worsted weight, probably an extra full ball of yarn. So that's about 200 yards for me. So that's about as much as I allow. It's better to have more, like if you buy more skeins and can return one when you're finished, if it's extra, than to not have enough skeins. So I would say at least an extra ball. Johnny's typing, but I can see if there's another one.
If you guys are having any issues with technical problems, either watching or downloading things, please email us. This is not the time for those types of questions. We can help you much better if you email us directly at questions@30daysweater.com.
Let's see. What other questions have we got?
Someone says, I could have used this neck measuring information before my last sweater. The sweater with the too tight neck.
Oh no. Maybe you could try a different bind off.
And they've coined a new nickname for you, Robert. Bobbert, the bearded ninja.
Can we have a theme song maybe for that? I think that would be good.
Next time. I'll work on that.
He's going to work on a theme song and report back.
Turtle says, I haven't joined yet. I selected the sleeve, neck, and length I want. When I went to sign up and pay, it said 30-day raglan sweater. I don't want to make a raglan sweater. If you're going to purchase the book or the sweater course, then that's what we are making in those products.
Otherwise, there are plenty of patterns out on the internet for the kinds of sweater that you're looking for. Even on Ravelry, they have a specific, they have a really great search function that says like, this is about how much yarn I want to use, and you can say like specific things that you want. So maybe that would be a good option to find a sweater. Let's see.
Let's see. California Coyote says that, can you talk about dealing with other pattern types? I'm knitting a bottom-up stockinette pattern with set-in sleeves. I will want to modify from a crew neck to a ballet boat neck. If you're using someone else's pattern, we can't really comment on how to adjust their specific pattern, especially since we don't own that pattern, and it's not our work.
But, I mean, I always, like, as a designer, like, I would not have a problem answering that kind of question if somebody emailed me. So, I mean, just try emailing the designer and say, hey, I really would like to make this modification. Do you have any recommendations? So, designers are really tend to be very helpful people. So, you know, I would say at least try asking.
We're all honored that you decided to knit something that we've created. So, you know, in most cases, we're going to be very amicable to helping you make the adjustments that you want to.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you do contact them and they're like, no, you can't do that, send us an email or post it on the Ravelry group, and I or someone else from the team, or maybe even someone who's taking the challenge, can help with those adjustments. But again, if you're knitting someone else's pattern, you know, we didn't design those patterns, so it's a little bit harder for us to offer support on how to modify those patterns. But those patterns, if you're knitting or designing a sweater pattern that is not using our framework, it is not eligible for the design competition. The reason for that, as we said yesterday, is our framework is very specific on how it's used. And so we can adapt a top-down raglan sweater to use our framework so that it can then be customized to anybody's body type. But we can't do that with other style sweaters for this particular product. We hope to have other 30-day sweater constructions in the future, but that will probably be in the coming years, coming months.
Okay, so here's another question. Do you need to add ease to your actual body measurements? No. So easily, the question there is no. If you're using a sweater pattern that already exists and is already written, they'll have already added in ease for the pattern. So you'll just pick the size that fits your actual body measurements, and you'll be good to go. Also, it's good to have just your body measurements on hand, so don't add ease to your measurements, because you might forget, like, oh, I've already added 4 inches of ease to this measurement, and then you add ease again, and you end up with a way too big sweater. So in the actual course, if you're taking the course or using the book, there are specific times when we say, okay, here's when you add ease, and this is how you do it. But if you're using a pre-existing pattern, it is already in it. So just take your measurements and write them down as is.
This question back here was, oh wait, up here, on a guy sweater, can you do something like reverse waist shaping for a bigger belly than a chest? This means that, can you add stitches to kind of flare the sweater out to fit, you know, someone who's got maybe more like a pot belly that's going to have a bigger measurement than a chest? Now, in most cases, when you actually do your measurements, they are not going to be bigger. They will actually end up being about the same. And even if they are, you're probably only going to see a slight difference as far as your inches. You know, you might have like 1 or 2 inches bigger around the waist than you do around the chest. The thing is that men's bodies come down at a V, like this, and so the chest is actually a bit wider than the waist is by quite a, or not quite a bit, depending on how you are. Whereas the stomach, when it's coming out for a man, you're then turning that to the side, and so proportionally, it ends up being about the same. So at the worst case scenario, you would not do any shaping coming down. You wouldn't reduce stitches. You just do a tube coming straight down. But I would not. Yes,
it is possible.
I would not add stitches.
You
can do it.
We do cover how to add stitches because some people are larger at the hips or waist area. So if you want to add stitches, that's definitely a possibility. It's called, what is that? Triangle waist shaping, so it's a little bit bigger.
More like an hourglass. For women, definitely, you know.
Stop, I'm talking.
Sorry.
Hourglass goes in and then out. And then there's a triangle shaping that just kind of goes out and doesn't come back in, which is fine. Different people are shaped differently, but adding stitches in, like, can make it just fit your body a little bit better, especially on women, to make it more flattering. And I actually, I talk about how to do that, and I would even recommend not doing a waist, I guess a hem finishing that draws in, because that actually would make it look less flattering. So there are a couple different ways to do that, but yes, the answer is you can add stitches out, so that if you have a larger waist than you do bust, or if you are knitting a Like if you're a woman and you're pregnant and your belly is much larger than your chest, then that's definitely a possibility. You can certainly add stitches to make it fit that and fit it well, make it look flattering.
Melian wants to know, are we going to replay today's show? So we will be replaying this. You can watch it whenever you want, all through today until tomorrow at this link, 30daysweater.com/live. But we will be posting our previous episodes on the website. You can find that either through 30daysweater.com/blog, or we're going to have a new link, which will be 30daysweater.com/show. And that will take you to past episodes of the 30-Day Sweater, or past episodes of the Sweater Knitting Show.
Yeah. So I think that's pretty much all we have today, or is
No, there's more questions.
there more?
Yeah. Let's see. Someone else want to know about cowl neck, how much extra?
Good thing we already answered it.
Let's see. Tall Dancer, do I need to make the neck larger for a turtleneck so it will fit over the head? I have a 17.5-inch neck, but the head is 24 inches.
So the way, if you're using the course or the book, the way that we create the neckline is actually called a dropped neckline. So if you were just casting on the neck stitches all at one time, that would certainly be a problem. But because the way that the neck is actually constructed, it opens it up a little bit so that as you're knitting the front of your sweater, it's dropping down the neckline so that your head can fit through it. The only time that you would need to add extra stitches around the neckline to fit head through is if you're doing it for like a baby. So they have like really big heads compared to their neck size. But if you're just making a turtleneck with the dropped neckline, then it shouldn't have to add any extra stitches.
Just make sure that whatever bind off you're using on the collar is elastic so that it will stretch some. If you're doing one that's really firm and doesn't stretch at all, then you may have some trouble getting it over your head. Stitch Wiz wants to know, can we demo how to send a picture to Ravelry? Because she doesn't do Twitter, Facebook, or any of those. We're not going to do how to do that because there's plenty of resources on Ravelry to show you how to put a photo into Ravelry. So it's pretty straightforward when you go to the Ravelry group. Dell wants to know, for the design challenge, we'll be putting sweaters into our second book, but they're going to be using the current framework, which is a top-down raglan sweater. So you can't do other types of sweater designs for the next volume of the book. It's going to only be top-down raglan sweaters for this particular design challenge. Stitchwiz says, why not cut your too small neck and attach a new ribbing?
Oh, that was for somebody else.
Oh, okay. Is the course book good for custom fitting a purchased pattern? She's saying that she's already purchased a different pattern that's a top-down raglan, and can you use this course or book for helping with that?
So actually what I would recommend, if you have a pattern in mind that has like either a specific stitch pattern or certain details and uses a specific yarn, you could probably adapt it. So you would just use the book and put in your measurements and then just make certain design choices so that it matches the sweater that you actually have. So say if you're like, all right, I can choose any neckline. We'll just choose the neckline that the other pattern has used. And then we give you instructions on how to do that. And then it says, well, this is the stitch pattern that it's made in. Okay, we'll use that stitch pattern as you're going through the sweater course. And then you can, it won't be the exact same sweater as it will not be from that pattern, but just the choices that you make when you're making your sweater, you can make it look very similar to that pattern, especially if you're using the same yarn, same needles, same neckline, that kind of thing. But you can't actually adapt their pattern, if that makes sense.
Nana Rita says, if I've purchased the ebook, am I also eligible to use the online tutorials? So I'm guessing you're talking about what's in the course. No, the course is a separate product.
But it includes the book.
But it does include the book. So you get the course and you get a copy of the book. The course goes through all of the same material as the book, but it has the addition of the chat room, the forum, you can kind of like track your progress as you're going, and it also has videos and photos to kind of help you with the different aspects of what we're doing. And we'll also be continually adding more resources to the course because we can update that, whereas the book, we can't really update that as frequently because there's a lot more work that goes into laying that out and such. So it's a lot more expandable and flexible, and it also includes the patterns that we'll be releasing later this week. If you want to design one of the sweaters using the framework that we've created. Otherwise, you can buy those individually if you've just purchased the book. But no, buying the book does not give you access to the course.
So I think that's the last question. It's been about an hour, so it's time for us to head out of here. If you have, if you are taking the course, you will be getting a daily email very soon, and most days it'll be coming out quite early in the morning, so you can just get started right away. Since today's the first day, it was a little bit later, but that'll be out shortly.
And we'll be here at 10:30 a.m. every Monday through Friday. Tomorrow, we've got a live guest that will be joining us from Northampton Wools, which is a yarn store in Massachusetts. Really excited to have them on board. They're one of our hosting yarn stores around the country. And we'll also be talking about a couple other things. And we'll be starting our first giveaway, our first weekly giveaway, which you can enter in tomorrow. So really excited about that. Remember, if you want to join into the Ravelry group, you can go to 30daysweater.com/Ravelry. If you want to track your progress and share it on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or Pinterest, make sure you use the hashtag 30daysweater. If you don't know what a hashtag is, it's the pound symbol that you would find on your phone. You're going to just put that in front of 30daysweater, and you'll be able to share that, and we can actually see all of the things that have been shared using those links. Invite your friends. It's definitely not too late to join in and start along. So let people know on Ravelry, on Knitting Paradise, and other forums to come join us. Email your friends and invite them to join. Remember, it's free to take the challenge. And if you want to still get the book or the course, you can do that as well. Again, it's not too late to get started.
And the link for that is?
To get the book is 30daysweater.com/book, or the course is 30daysweater.com/course. And in your sweater planning guide, there should be a coupon to get a discount on either of those. So thank you all for joining us today for the Sweater Knitting Show, and we will see you tomorrow. And have a wonderful day.
Cheerio!
Happy knitting.